Good morning, party people, and welcome to Office Hours. I am actually probably going to be streaming for a while today because there are two things that I want to accomplish. The one main thing that I wanted to accomplish was I wanted to write a blog post. I wanted to write a blog post about what is compatibility level, which sounds probably like a junior topic for a lot of y'all who would attend these kinds of streams. But it'll be interesting for you to see how I write a relatively short blog post, one that you would think would be easy to write and shouldn't take a lot of work to crank out. You'll see the thought process that goes behind that. And then there are also a lot of good questions over at PollGab, but I just wanted to mix things up and do the blog post writing, and then we'll go tackle the Q&A. So in the beginning of the session, I'm going to go through and write a blog post, which is going to be confusing. Actually, I should probably answer a couple of questions first for people who start coming in. We'll answer one or two questions first. Let's see here. We'll take Index et al. Asks, hey Brent, are there any clear or reset features built into the SP Blitz results set? We had a memory dump 2 years ago and we sorted it out, but it still comes up high on priority list from the date 2 years ago. I agree with you that it probably doesn't make sense to keep that in the like top high priority result list. Hit the README for SP Blitz. There's a README file that comes with it, and post a support issue on GitHub. I'll change that filter on there. It's relatively easy to do. I'll change that filter so that it only looks for, say, memory dumps in the last 3 months. Probably 3 months makes sense there. Oh, default blame acceptors over in San Diego too, as well, and Misty and Drizzly. There was someone else in chat. It was Misty here this morning. I really thought it was going to rain. I have a pool pump, like a pool cleaning pump outside, and it's not waterproof, which seems kind of odd for a pool cleaning pump. But when it's going to rain, I have to take it inside. We're in the midst of building a big thing in the backyard, and then it'll be underneath an awning, and I won't have to worry about it as much. But so I continuously watch the weather to check and see whether or not I got to bring this thing inside. And the weatherman swears it's not going to rain today, but boy, it looked like it was going to rain earlier. General Concativity says Brent's hair is my hair goals. I was blessed with my mom's side of the family's hair. My mom's side of the family has really thick hair. It just goes completely gray early. Like my mom was gray at like by age 30, I think, 30, 35, somewhere in there, and she dyed her hair for years. I as a guy, American society's kind of sexist. It's okay if a guy has gray hair, and then a lot of people are like, no, women shouldn't have gray hair young. Could go into all kinds of things with that. But I was like, I loved it. I loved that my hair started going gray early. I gave me some credibility when I would go into clients. It looked like I vaguely had some experience, even when I not necessarily had much. We'll answer one other one. Nick asks, will you be doing a pre-con at the PASS Summit this year? So they have, the call for speakers went out, I think it was March. All during March, not all during, it was like a 2-week or 3-week call for speakers, so you could submit sessions. I submitted 1 or 2 pre-con sessions. Now it's going to drive me crazy. Oh, running SQL Server in the cloud. Running SQL Server in the cloud was one of them. I forget what the other one was, but it was either that or a mastering, one of my mastering classes. So we'll find out as we get closer to Summit. They're mixed. They put out a PDF that says here are the kinds of sessions that we're looking for. They want a really broad list of sessions. They want stuff on all kinds of topics: Postgres, Amazon, Azure, MongoDB. Like they want topics on all kinds of stuff, and they also want less sessions. Well, if you want more coverage and less sessions overall, that means the competition is going to be pretty cutthroat for people like me who tend to speak more on SQL Server topics. So if I don't get picked, it wouldn't break my heart. I'm always like totally amazed and humbled when I actually get chosen for stuff like past pre-cons, because it's a pretty big business. And so we'll see if it actually happens this year or not. I'll go regardless. I'll go whether I get a session or not, because we're still in the kind of family reunion phase of conferences where it's so good to see people for the first time in the longest time. It's up in November. It's up in Seattle in November, which isn't my favorite place to go and time to go. Like I could go the rest of my life and never see Seattle in November again. It's dark, gloomy, wet all the time. The homeless problem's pretty bad in downtown Seattle, so you don't really want to walk in a lot of those places. But the community is just so good that I'm like, yeah, I want to go back and see all my friends. Okay, so now let's go write a blog post. Let me click a little something here to make that question go away. So now let's write a blog post. So I want to write a blog post on, we'll write it together. I'll switch over and share my screen here in a second. I want to write a blog post on what is compatibility level. Now, for a lot of y'all who would watch sessions like this, that seems like really easy for you because you think that you know about how all that kind of thing works. Me as a writer, there are some blog posts that I write to stun my long-term readers. Like, hey, here's something I bet you didn't know. This isn't designed to be one of those posts. This is designed to be one of those posts where people find it in Google, where they're trying to understand what compatibility level they should set their databases to and why and what changes that makes. Now, you almost want to think about, all right, what's in scope and what's in, oh, hey, G Surgeon from the Netherlands. Oh, hey, Jedi Mind Gorilla too as well. Been a while there. So you want to think about what's in scope and what's not in scope. The other way to think about this is who's my target reader? A way that I like to answer those questions is I like to go to Google and ask the kind of question that I think the reader will be asking when they find the site in Google. Let's go do it. So I've got here the blog, the control panel for WordPress set up inside here. We're going to come back over into there in a minute when we write the post. But for now, I'm going to go over to Google and I'm going to say, what is SQL Server compatibility level? And now you see there are these people also ask questions. This is really good to understand how to get into the frame of mind of the kind of people who will be reading this blog post. Because remember, this isn't for my long-term readers. This isn't for people like you who come out and hang out with me all the time and watch the streams. This is for people who are just stumbling in via search engines. So let me move something around on my blog post here. There we go. Or move something around on my screen so that I can watch you party people's chats. So that gives me an idea of the kinds of things that I want to have. Big Mouse Gang represent. So the kinds of things that I want to answer inside there. Does it affect performance? What does changing the compatibility level do? Another thing that's neat with this is when you see the people also ask stuff, these are good headers to put in the blog post. Because if you can write a really good answer to that question, then Google will use your blog post to answer that snippet. For example, if I expand here and I say, does SQL compatibility level affect performance? Upgrade compatibility level degrades performance. This is the answer that Google's showing right now. I don't know about you, but I think that's actually a really terrible answer, and that's something that I think that I could do better in here, like have a plain English sentence where it really makes sense. So let's think about this. The kinds of people that we're targeting for, they don't know how to set compatibility level, they don't know how it affects performance, they don't know what it does when we change it. So let's start by thinking through how we're going to write that. We'll switch over to adding our new post. And in the title, it's going to be, what is SQL Server compatibility level? That sounds kind of cheesy and SEO-ish. I'm not quite sure I really like that. Or what does which SQL Server compatibility level should I use? I also like things that aren't yes/no questions, because yes/no questions, people kind of like go, yes, obviously, or no, obviously, and then they don't read it. So now I'm going to start writing. I'm going to say, if you right-click on a database in SQL Server Management Studio, you get an option to set compatibility level. And I'm going to put it in with a picture. Google really loves it when you put pictures inside blog posts. So I'm going to right-click on my Stack Overflow database. I'm going to go into Options, and I'm going to actually take a screenshot of compatibility level with this drop-down showing. So let's go grab a screenshot of that. Whoops, I need to get this set up just right here so that I can grab it. Copy. And now let's paste that over into my Windows window. I'm doing the screenshotting over on my Mac desktop here. So SQL Server compatibility level. Let's drag and drop that into there. Whoops. I can't drag and drop because it's on remote desktop. That's right. Let's paste it. Copy paste. All right, there we go. So I got our screenshot, and now I will drag that over into WordPress. Whoop-de-doo. My blog post, it seems a little kludgy, that little workflow right there. I usually write my blog post natively on the Mac. I don't usually do it in remote desktop windows, but this makes the streaming part easier. So I'm going to show it 600 pixels across, link to the media file, insert. So here we go. We get this compatibility level. And then I'm also going to set this as the featured image in WordPress so that when somebody's browsing the web and they want to see what I'm talking about, they're going to be able to see that this is the image that the blog post is about. So now I'm going to say, when you upgrade SQL Server or you want to improve performance, which option should you choose? Should you always go with the newest compatibility level? If you have an old application, can you upgrade SQL Server? SQL Pile says, where is SQL Server 2005? In the dumpster, where it belongs. Now, I say that facetiously. I actually liked SQL Server 2005 a great deal, but that was 17 years ago. Can you upgrade SQL Server but still keep the old compat level without the vendor knowing? Let's hit the common questions. So what does compatibility level do? Compatibility. So, and I'm gonna describe what my answer would be first. Hold on, let's switch over to here. So I'm going to describe what my thought process is, because of course I got to kind of think through this out loud when I'm doing the writing too. Like the right words don't just come to me when I start typing. So what does compatibility level do? A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, it only influenced the way that your T-SQL was interpreted. So that if they had new features in SQL Server, the new T-SQL capabilities would only be included in the newer compat levels. Old people like me with lots of gray hair, that's what we usually think of for compat levels. But the thing is, I'm writing this blog post in the year 2023, and for the last several versions, the answer to that has been different. It's less about T-SQL compatibility now, and it's now about enabling new features in the engine. Whenever Microsoft brings out a new feature in the engine, these days they tend to gate it behind the newest compatibility levels, so that older compatibility levels should behave roughly similar to older versions of SQL Server. It's not the gospel truth. Sometimes when they yank things out of the engine, there are things that you can't do even when you set the old compat levels to true. So the way that I'm going to answer this in the year 2023 is I'm going to talk about gating features behind newer compat levels. Boy, the older compat level you have to work with, the more you pull your hair out. So let's come back over to here. So we'll say, what does compatibility level do? And I'm going to make that a header too. Google likes headers. Not that big of a header. Let's come back here, heading 3. All right, so when Microsoft brings out a new version of SQL Server, they tend to keep the newest features hidden only available in the newest compatibility levels. For example, SQL Server 2022's parameter sensitive plan optimization, PSPO, is only available in SQL Server 20 in databases that run. That's another thing I need to say is this is a database level setting. In databases running under SQL Server 2022 compatibility level. So I'm going to say compatibility. Oops, no, I'm going to put the database level thing somewhere up here. You get a database level option to set, or you get an option to set it at the database level. All right. So now I also want to link to 2022's parameter sensitive plan optimization because a lot of people aren't going to know what that is. Parameter sensitive plan optimization, Brent Ozar. Let's go grab the URL for that, copy it, and paste it over here. So SQL Server 2022's PISPO is only available under that. Paste. So this means, so that means if you're taking a database that used to live on an older SQL Server and you want to host it in SQL Server 2022, and you want it to have the same behavior that it's always been used to, you should keep it on the compatibility level that it's currently on. For example, if you're hosting it in SQL Server 2016 and the database, I didn't mean to yell there. Database is currently at SQL Server 2016 compatibility level, then you could move the database to a 2022 server, but keep compat level on 2016, and the user shouldn't notice the difference. In reality, though, there are things inside the engine that will change regardless of what compat level you're at. There are things inside SQL Server itself, at the server level, that will change no matter what your compatibility level is. For example, if Microsoft deprecates a feature and removes it altogether, that feature isn't available even if you're on older compat levels. Hello, big data clusters. So let's throw a link in there to Big Data Clusters, Big Data Clusters site, brentozar.com. Big Data Clusters is probably a bad example because it's a giant, it's not just a feature that you would enable, but I think it's kind of funny, so I'm going to use it anyway. Copy and then paste. I was also going to say SQL Server Notification Services, but it's been like 17 years since that fiasco, so no sense in beating that dead horse. Okay. So can I run old compatibility levels without problems? And let's go back and let's look at what the people were asking. Should I change it? Should I change it? Let's do that one. Let's set that. Should I change compatibility level when I move to new? Let's just say, should I change the compatibility level? Should I change the compatibility level? How do I want to say this? If there's a feature that's only available in the newer compatibility levels, then yes. If there's a specific feature that you need that's only available in some compat levels, then yes. If you're happy with performance, then no. Hear me out. Changing your compatibility level. Changing your compatibility level. Actually, I'm going to make this the first sentence. Okay, so remember a second ago when we were looking at Google search results, and I said that right underneath the questions, when you click the thing down inside there, Google likes to pick a sentence right after the question and use that as the answer. So with that in mind, then I'm going to cut this and move it up here. I'm going to cut you. Changing your compatibility level can make performance worse instead of better. Sure, in some cases, it makes performance great. But because all change equals risk, then changing compat level when you're already happy is dangerous. Um, I actually do like the if there's a specific feature. I'm going to throw that in first. Um, so then I'm going to say, however, if you're happy with performance, then no. What should I measure before changing compatibility level? Um, in theory, you should have a baseline, a performance baseline of things like, make this a heading. You should have a performance baseline. I love bulleted lists. I love bulleted lists. It's so funny. I was writing an email back and forth with a friend of mine, and I put in like 3 bulleted lists inside the same email. This friend of mine was like, I love how, anytime you need to do anything, you just immediately drop back to bulleted lists. You should have things like CPU, memory, and storage metrics, your top weight types, so you know what SQL Server is bottlenecked on, which queries are using the most resources, and query plans of well-performing queries, because things might get worse and you'll want to know what they used to look like back in the good old days. All right, so let's see here. So Jetamind Gorilla says, oh wait, so if I upgraded to 2016, a live data query kicked in, almost killed the server. Correct me if I'm wrong. Could I set that database back to 2014 compat level? Live query plans is not compatibility level driven. That's a great question, but it's not compat level driven. It's something that's driven by trace flags and I want to say alter database configurations. So it's not. It's a great question. I mean, that's the idea in theory, but that's not one of the compat level questions. So let's see here. So then when people suddenly complain about performance, you can check your baseline to see whether things actually got worse or whether your users had taken up eating shrooms. You could also track down which queries were now at the top of your resource consuming query list. Look at what their query plans used to look like, and then figure out how to get back to the good old days. Common ways to accomplish this are third-party monitoring products, Query Store, or the First Responder Kit. In reality, you're not going to do any of this. So when you change compatibility levels, I'm going to say you're not going to do any of this ahead of time. So when you change compatibility levels on the fly and performance gets worse, you're not going to have any answers. Does that mean I shouldn't touch compatibility level? No, not at all. Which sounds like I'm going to be sarcastic, but I'm not. You can change compatibility levels whenever you want, one database at a time. You can also change back instantly as well. So you just need to be aware of when you made the change, what you changed, and communicate it to the rest of the team so they can roll your change back if necessary. All right, so there's basically, I'm going to save my draft here. There's basically what I wanted to say. Now, oops, I got a bag behind me here. Got to go get rid of that bag. I bought security cameras. I have security cameras, but they're Wi-Fi, and they are battery operated, so the batteries drain down after a few months, so I keep having to recharge them. So I'm like, all right, screw it, I'm going to wired. So those are the big things that I wanted to say. Now, let's go back over to Google and see what else people were asking that I can include in here. So people said, does SQL compatibility level affect performance? So I'm going to ask it as, come on down here. How, see, I want to put in how to SQL Server. How does compatibility level affect performance? SQL Server's compatibility level. Oh, let's do this. I want to give a specific list, a concrete list of things that if you changed from one version to another, what would be different? If you migrated from SQL Server 2019 to 2022, here are ways that changing a database's compatibility level can make things better or worse. All right, so there's my bulleted list again. So let's do this. What's new in SQL Server compatibility level 2022 160? All right, so that's a question. Okay, what compatibility levels? Oh, I love that. Oh, that's actually good. I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to make a note of it. So, I want to go basically like how long can I keep old compatibility levels, and can I upgrade databases without people knowing? What compatibility levels are available? How can I keep an old database under old compatibility level? Can I move a database to a new server without people knowing, or without the vendor knowing? I'll come back to that when I write that section. So back up here on how does compat level affect performance? So I was like, okay, so what's new? I didn't want to just do overall what's new in SQL Server. It's always funny to see what's new in SQL Server 2022 intelligent query performance, or intelligent query processing. There we go. That's the word I want. So some of these are gated behind, optimize, query store hints too. Oh yeah, cardinality estimator feedback, degree of parallelism feedback. Okay, I want to say, look at that handsome man there. No, that's not me. That's Pedro Lopes. Let's see here. So beautiful. Okay, fantastic. So this says IQP features for Azure 2020, Azure 2022, and so forth. See how it says starting with compat level? What we're looking for is things that are starting in SQL Server 2022 with compat level 160. So we're going to copy paste that exact link out. So here are ways. I'm going to put a hyperlink to it. And then I'm going to say cardinality estimation feedback, copy link address. Cardinality estimation feedback will change a query's estimated number of rows. Change the copy paste this over here. Copy. And I'll say can change. Did that link actually work? Yeah, okay, that's fine. Next up, we have degrees of parallelism feedback, copy link address, degrees of parallelism feedback can, I don't want to say force, can guide a query to use less CPU cores. Copy paste. Can reduce the overhead. It can reduce the overhead of bad parallelism. Most parallelism is good though. Let's see here. What else? Degrees of parallelism, interleaved execution. There was a lot of good stuff in 2019 and 2017. 2022, memory grant feedback. Okay, it's kind of tricky how they say that. Optimized plan forcing, no. Here we go. PISPO, parameter sensitive plan optimization. Parameter sensitive plan optimization can help SQL Server, can cache multiple query plans for the same query. Copy and paste. There we go. Intelligent query processor. Okay, good. All right, that's good. So that gives me a rough idea, or gives me a few quick things there. In each version of SQL Server, different features are enabled under newer compatibility levels. Before changing your compat level, you should review what features are added when you change from your current compatibility level to the new one. This is a good starting point. Copy, and this is a good starting point. It's so much easier when I'm not doing it over a remote desktop. There we go. Copy and paste. There we go. Okay, cool. Okay, so down at the bottom, we had a couple of other questions that I wanted to go add into there. Waiting for BrentOzar.com. There it goes. So let's come down towards that. So there were a couple of things that I wanted to add. What compatibility levels are available? As the screenshot at the top of the blog post was taken in SQL Server 2022, and even in this recent release, Microsoft supports compatibility levels going all the way back to SQL Server 2008. That's kind of awesome because it means that Microsoft is trying to keep old databases working great in newer versions of SQL Server. In theory, that means you can take an old vendor application that was once certified on SQL Server 2008 and keep moving it to newer and newer versions of SQL Server. In theory, that means it'll keep working the exact same way as long as you keep the same compatibility level. And hey, it might even get faster if you move to newer, or if you change to newer compatibility levels. Then, so can I actually do that? Well, no. The problem, make sure that's a period. I mean, you could, but you might get caught. Here's the thing. The vendor might be relying on a feature that's no longer available in newer versions of SQL Server. I gotta be honest, that's extremely unlikely. But it is possible. And if they are, and their application suddenly breaks, you can't restore a SQL Server, you can't restore a newer SQL Server database to an older version of SQL Server. So if you take your SQL Server 2008 server, back up the databases, restore them onto SQL Server 2022, and then start using the app, and people start complaining, you can't restore those 2022 backups down onto SQL Server 2008, even if they're Still in the same 2008 compat level. You can only restore to newer versions of SQL Server, not older. Because it's therefore you're taking a risk when you restore databases, when you move databases onto newer versions of SQL Server. Make sure the vendor actually supports the newer version of SQL Server, because you don't want to be the person that the vendor blames for their application not working successfully. Successfully. Okay, all right, love that. Okay, so we were going for like half an hour there. It takes like half an hour to write that. And let's think about what this blog post doesn't include. Where's the button? There it is. This blog post doesn't include any examples. I didn't have any performance benchmarks. I didn't put any T-SQL example queries. That's half an hour, and the thing's already at 1,000 words. Gives you a pretty good idea for, and I wasn't learning anything. I was just dumping out brain dumps of very quickly, here are the things that I know, basically typing as fast, as quickly as I could talk. So you've got to be careful if you're going to go write blog posts, to scope them very quickly and make sure to understand who your target audience is and who your target audience isn't, because there's just only so much that you can explain inside a short period of time. Let's take a short break. We'll take a short ad break, and then a 90-second ad break, and then we'll go answer some of your questions. So for those of you who are still seeing this, and it may be all of you, I should actually look at the Twitch control panel and see how that works. Yeah. So for those of you who are seeing this, it's because you're subscribers. You've subscribed to my Twitch channel. Yay, you! But those people who haven't subscribed, they unfortunately are stuck watching 90 seconds worth of ads. So I got a little countdown timer. This is the first time I've ever done this, too. I'm starting to kind of get the hang of the streaming thing. So I've got a little countdown timer there. D. Sanchez says, yay! See, now I can see who's subscribed and who's not. So the little countdown timer there shows when they'll be back from their ad break. I got to figure out what I'm going to do in the 90 seconds that they see ads. See, it with Twitch, I have to show 90 seconds worth of ads. It's like every half hour. And I blew past that half hour thing. They may have even already shown ads once during my stream. I got to get better at doing that proactively. I got to get better at doing it, say, every 15 minutes or 20 minutes to get ahead of Twitch and do it when I want to do it instead of when Twitch wants to do it randomly, because it's kind of a bummer if they suddenly break in and start doing an ad right at the moment where I'm explaining something cool. So why run ads? So it's a very small amount of money. It's like max I think it ever was like $400 in a 1 month time span where I would make get money from ads. People are coming back. Welcome back, folks. So it's like $400 a month peak when I was running ads. These days, I don't expect it to be more than like $100, $200 a month, just because I'm only doing a certain number of subscribed streams or scheduled streams, and they're not that long. I'm not going for hours like a lot of the big streamers do. The cheap seats are back, Bob the Lobster. Okay, so now let's hit some of your questions. Come back over here. Let's go over PollGab and hit some of your questions. Let's see. Mickey Mouse says, did it go up there? It did not go up there. Hold on a second. Let me switch this other screen. Make sure that it refreshes and shows the question. Now, Mickey Mouse says, do you recommend updating stats daily with the default settings in a data warehouse environment to improve performance for reporting queries? No. We often see estimates versus actual going more than 10x off for those reporting queries. Here's the deal with data warehouse. Every night you load a bunch of data and then you immediately turn around and query that data with things like scheduled reports. And if you load a bunch of data and then immediately go back and query it and the stats aren't up to date, well, then you won't get good estimates about how many rows are going to come back for it. Like if you load data for a specific sales date and SQL Server has no information about that sales date yet. Updating stats repeatedly isn't the right answer because it's going to add so much lag time on your data warehouse load times. It's going to be so read intensive and take so long. What you want to do instead, this is going to sound absolutely crazy, but if you care enough about this and you don't have the window, nightly load time window, what you want to do is pre-build statistics for future dates. Google for Thomas Kaiser, Kejser, ascending key problem. And Thomas Kaiser has a great blog post series. It's probably from 15 years ago now, but it's not a new problem. And SQL Server's always struggled with it. That teaches you how to pre-build statistics. Now, you only want to do this for things like date columns. That'll give you a rough estimate of how many rows are going to come back from each date, but it's a really slick trick that you can do on those columns to make sure that you have vaguely accurate statistics without having to wait for statistics rebuilds. Pretty nifty problem to solve. I also should say that I would only worry about that kind of thing on 1 terabyte tables. If I've got a table that's a terabyte or more, then it starts to matter. But on smaller sizes, you tend to have enough hardware horsepower to overcome some of those problems. Next up, let's see here. Ram Detroit asks, any advice on executing Python code inside SQL Server? Do not do that. Do not do that. Do not do that.
All right.
Because SQL Server is $2,000 a CPU core for licensing. For Enterprise Edition, it's $7,000 US per core. Python is, let me hold the numbers, 0. You can get Python app servers all day, every day. Go do that there. Go do it in a Linux box. Go do it on a Windows box. Do not do it where it costs you $2,000 to $7,000 per CPU core. I know you're thinking you're thinking, oh, I only have to do this once a week. Once you lean on that crutch, you are going to be leaning on that crutch for the rest of your life. Do not do that. Unless, of course, you want to spend all kinds of money. G. Surgeon asks a question that's really related to some of the stuff that we were talking about here. It says, Brent, if a customer would ask if our application would support SQL Server 2022, what would that entail? Our application runs on it. We'll fix performance issues, but what is there more to it in general? For me, the biggest thing by far is if you allow your customers to change compat level and they go to 2022 compat level, do you know that performance doesn't get dramatically worse? I'll give you a great example. When SQL Server 2019's inline functions came out, I had ISV customers that were just catastrophically crippled because their queries used to perform okay, and then all of a sudden these scalar functions got inlined and things got dramatically worse. So they just had to get ahead of it and tell their customers, we support SQL Server 2019. We just don't support 2019 compat level. And of course, the customers are like, why? That's where all the good stuff is. You should totally support that. And then you have to have the explanation about, look, we're going to have to do additional coding work in order to make our stuff work. And I don't know that Microsoft's not just going to turn around and fix some of those bugs with 2019 and cumulative updates. So why would we invest a whole lot of money in fixing something that Microsoft really broke themselves and we could just wait on Microsoft to go fix it? So I'm a really big fan of that. I know. Oh yeah, Jedi Mind Gorilla. Yeah, I know, right? So this is this runs in. I run into this all the time with this shirt. This is from Go Fast Don't Die. Go Fast Don't Die. I think it's .com, but they have a store on Instagram. They have all kinds of funny T-shirts about cars. And so for those of you who aren't into cars, brap is the noise that like Subaru 4-cylinders make, or like small engines make when you put big fart can mufflers on them. And so it's a car-related kind of thing. But I'll wear it to car shows on like Sundays, and then people kind of look at it and get it. But otherwise, I'm not really religious. All right, that's probably a good place to stop. We've been going for quite a while, and we'll stop there. I know I was worried about going a longer period of time. Oh, Jedi says I recently retired. Oh, wait, retired. Oh, retired. Yeah, boy, the great resignation has really been something, hasn't it? Between all the layoffs and switcheroos. And it's always been funny. People for the longest time would say things like, well, database administrators are doomed. They're going to be automated away. Artificial intelligence is totally going to take our jobs. And the things that end up taking people's jobs is not better automation or the cloud or artificial intelligence. It's just plain old economic cycles. We have economic roller coasters there, especially we saw during the pandemic or whatever, where companies would wildly overhire and then they'd wildly lay people off. So it's been a controversial, a roller coaster of a ride for everybody, regardless of what their job titles are or where they work for the last couple of years. All right, so we'll stop there. Thanks for hanging out with me during office hours, and I will see y'all next Wednesday at the next office hours. Adios.